Uh, so I'm going to share my slides, and I think, let me put the link in the chat one more time in case there were new people who came in. Maybe. There we go. All right, so those are our slides in the chat. Can anyone very quickly tell me what you will do with that link if you want to make sure you know where these slides sit after today? You can go ahead and just unmute if you have an answer. So we talked about it last time, right? You have the option of if someone shares slides or any Google document with you via a link, there are a couple of different things to consider. Do you want to get back to the live version of that document that might have been updated or changed because it's that kind of document, which I think this is. Then you might want to do a shortcut to this and put it into a folder so you know where it is. If it's something where it's a static document where each one of you are going to get your own, or it's just something to read, but it's not going to be changed, then you might want to make a copy or make it down or download it. And then if it's something where each of you need your own because you're going to be doing work on something, then you definitely want to make a copy or download it. So I did make a video and I shared the link to you. It's longer than it needs to be because I kind of go into my whole philosophy just like I just did now. But the key is that when someone shares a link with you in Zoom, you want to click on that link. And then if you're logged into Google, so something to consider when you're going to join a workshop like this, or if you were going to give directions to your learners, maybe you want them all to sign into Google before they actually join. Again, this is more for folks who are joining via computer than on their phones. So once you're logged into Google, then being able to add this through under File, I have options like download these. I can also add the shortcut, and I can make a copy. And again, if you choose to do this with your learners, this is actually very important. Someone brought up the idea of the information literacy, and this is kind of that, right? Like, how do we organize? How do we get back? How do we consciously, explicitly decide where things are, what we're going to do with them? So there's like this kind of thought process that we go through, which is, these are kind of learning skills we would have done maybe like if I give you an assignment, where do you write it down so you can get back to it later, right? Like these are all tools for learning that actually have value for us in all parts of our lives. So you have the slides. Thank you, May. I see you wrote shortcut. Thank you. So yeah, I would do a shortcut because I will definitely be adding stuff after the session if I don't have a chance to do it while we're talking because you've already given me so many great resources. So last time we were talking about assessment. This time we're looking at resources and strategies for the digital literacy instruction itself. Assessment obviously is important if you have the ability to assess folks so you know where they are, and then you can start from there. I think the majority of you are doing digital skills, if not all of you, are doing digital skill instruction as part of content instruction, and then you don't usually have that ability, but you might still want to use an assessment either just to get a sense of how the skills are in the class, or at the end of the class to show themselves and you and whoever else, funders maybe, that there has been measurable skill gain. So the assessments are still valuable. What we're going to talk about today, we're going to look at you guys gave me a bunch of, you shared with me both through a form and I think through in the chat, you told me the skills that you think are the most important, and I grabbed that. So we're going to look at that just quickly to kind of remind ourselves what we prioritized. Then we're going to look at some curricula that's already been created, and at least I think there are 5 different, I won't call them, they're not all curricula. So they're curricula and lesson banks, maybe is a way to talk about them. And some are aimed at very low level ESL. Others are definitely have a range of lessons that you can decide how you might use them with your learners. Again, the struggle that I heard you all, many of you mention, is the fact that for many classes, learners are accessing materials or participating electronically or digitally with you via their phones. So we want to keep in mind that if that's where your learners are coming from, we can do a lot of digital skill work on phones, but it's going to be more of the, like, I love the scavenger hunt for, a Google search, a scavenger hunt, for example, is very easy to do on the phone. So we want to keep that in mind. If you have the luxury of access to computers, definitely makes it a little easier to do a lot of the creation that, for example, the Google tools will look at. Slides, for example, are wonderful to look at on a small screen, but they're not so great to create there. So you don't have that luxury of being able to create slides, but you could do other things where maybe you use photos or something else as a way to share ideas. Okay, so, and then at the very end, I have some resources for you to look for ed tech tools. So one of the things we want to think a little bit about is the fact that, I think I said this last time. So when I first was working in this area, we used to call it tech integration. And it was kind of looked at from the perspective of, as a teacher, how do you bring tech into your teaching? I feel like ever since COVID, we talk more about digital skills, and that they are actually hand in hand, but it's looking at it from the other side, right? Where the learner, what digital skills do you want the learner to have, and how are they going to practice them? That speaks to maybe what tools you might use. And many of you today mentioned some places online that either have content already built into them or are tools where you can put your own content into them that require learners to work digitally to access that content. So these ed tech tools, they're lists of ed tech tools, and some of them are content ready, and some of them are tools like Padlet where you can put your own content in there. And so it's a little tricky that's like it's like a course to talk about the tools that are out there. I think we tend to find the tools that we particularly like, and we use those a lot, and we shape them to our needs, and that's part of our creativity. And a big part of adult education teaching is creativity, how we get resources or develop our resources. But there are some things out there that are already made that might be valuable and useful for you today. So we'll do a little review there. We'll see how much time we have left by that time. All right, so by the end of today, you will be able to locate digital skill lessons from 4 different sources. So we're going to look at those today. And then you're also going to be able to talk a little bit about strategies and some of these, the ways to bring digital skills into instruction. So last time you guys, let's go ahead and open this document up. Maybe my computer is very slow today. There we go. So I took the chat from last time and I put it into ChatGPT, and I said, tell me, what are people thinking are the most important things for their learners? And this is what it spat out at me, which I thought was pretty useful. So many of you talked about, I think email still felt like it was a very central topic, and then it was sort of attaching documents to an email, sending and receiving emails. I thought the research and information literacy, which I think safety online and online citizenship are another area that I've heard often from instructors, that when they work with learners, it's a very important area. And we can certainly talk a little bit about that today, which kind of fits, I think, into privacy and security, but it's another piece of that. These scams, how you decide when something is legit or not, or how you move forward so that you're safe when you're making that decision. Workplace related skills, again, a lot of these overlap with each other. Communication and collaboration, adapting to new tools, and then AI. I think some of you did mention AI. We won't go into AI so much today, but there are definitely other workshops coming up that will go further into AI, I think. And then, yeah, like I said, I felt like emails, we're gonna use email today as an example. So we'll be looking at that kind of all these pieces. I think we can relate into email. And then the use of native language. So we're going to look at that also as one of the strategies that you can actually teach the skills for folks who need the extra help. They can get extra help in their own language or in their native language, and then bring that skill and then uh, do their English instruction that way. So we had that. And like I said, I kind of what I took out of that was email as a sort of overarching topic. These were things we looked at last time as far as frameworks and other places where you can find lists of skills. And again, that we did that last time. So you've already reviewed all of those things. So getting into the instructional pieces of the curriculum pieces. So there is, as I mentioned, we have digital resilience in the American workforce, which is shortened to DRAW. And this is a project from the Department of Education, the big federal Department of Education, the Office of Continuing and I'm not going to remember, Octave. So this is specifically created for adult education. And it looks at this idea of resilience where we can't possibly teach everybody all the things they need to know, both because we just don't have time and wherewithal, but also because it changes all the time. And that this is a phrase I think that's used in math instruction a lot. There's been this idea of resilience in mathematics where you have some skills that help you when you have to try something new after you've left the class, and that you've developed. It's a sort of a fortitude. There's an emotional component to this, but there's also some very clear things that you can try out, right? And you can notice and you can do things that help you. You know how to do. I've done this on a Google Doc, but I've never done it in Word. I have some thoughts about maybe how similar it would be. I'm going to notice, oh, they're using the same terms, or there are these other drop downs, or it's kind of common that the login is up in the top right corner, but maybe if I don't see it there, maybe it's in the left corner. So some ways that we can help people feel less, I was going to say anxious. It's more than that. And I will say for myself, with computers and digital work, I tend to feel like it's a machine. I can overcome whatever obstacles. So I feel very safe trying out things. When I work with folks who are struggling and feel like they'll say they're not techie. Often it's because they think other people are faster and more naturally able to do things. And it really isn't that. Like, I'm really good at Googling how to do things, right? So in my office, people would come to me and say, "Now, how do I do a mail merge?" And I'm like, I don't remember how to do a mail merge. I haven't had to do one for years, but I can Google it and I'm willing to do that. And even in my searching, when I first search, maybe I don't get the response I want, but I feel able to tweak my search and get somewhere where I want to go. And I might still be really irritated, but I can get there. For me, the place I don't have a lot of resilience is with sewing machines. So I can really understand if I think about that. And I think in our lives, we probably all have things like this where we feel very able, even if we can't tell someone how to do exactly the thing now, we feel able to find it or try things out. And then there are other things where we are like, oh my gosh, like it might be baking or cooking, could be either of these things, or navigating, or whatever. I think most people have. Hopefully, we have these two examples in our lives, and so I can really empathize because of my experience with sewing machines, where I'm convinced that the sewing machine, yes, it's working now, but it might not work again tomorrow. It's a mystery, and other people are better at sewing than I am. I have all of those feelings, and I've had exactly those sentences told to me by people around, how to make a Google Slides presentation or something like, yeah, I tried it, and then yesterday it was gone. I don't know where it is. And so we want to help our learners feel this sense of resilience. And sometimes that's even just demonstrating how you work through problems, right? So as teachers, I think sometimes there can be a nervousness about using technology because it doesn't always work the same way, and it's just easier not to rely on it. And what we're going to suggest is that no, you should use it. And even if you come in one day and it's changed, demonstrate how you handle that. Like, be aware that you are a model in how we overcome these obstacles, because it is part of what technology particularly seems to present. So that was a lot of chatter, but anyway, so digital resilience is a concept in the world. You'll also see if you Google digital resilience also is a term used for companies about their ability to overcome, the if something terrible happens to their whole system and their servers go down or something like that. So there are two meanings to the phrase digital resilience. We're using it for humans and how they overcome the barriers and obstacles to being able to do the things they want to do online or with the digital devices. So Draw has been, I think, over the last 2 years, been developing resources that are useful to us. Last time we looked at, or it's actually up here too, the Seattle Digital Equity Initiative that had those 10 domains. Looks like this. So Draw uses these 10 domains and has developed a bank of lesson ideas, resources, tutorials that support all of these different sets of skills. And that's in that digital skills library. So if we go to the digital skills library, we see all those little icons. Maybe. Like I said, my internet today, see, this is my digital resilience. I need to be filled with it today. So this is the digital skills library. And if we scroll down, we have all the domains. And if I was to click on a domain, I will see a list of skills. And we had talked about getting an email, for example, right? So they're getting an email skill set. If we come down here, I can look for email. And you'll see that they've trying to capture a lot of the different resources that are out there. So something that they rely on a lot is the applied digital skills, which we're going to look at more deeply. They're also using, what did I see there? GCFlearnfree.org, which is from Goodwill. And Goodwill has done a lot of very step-by-step tutorials, very usefully done. Again, the language level can be a little high, so it might not always be something to use with folks who are still at the beginning levels of English. And Whisk Online is another resource that they go to quite frequently. You can see if it's a project, a module, a tutorial. So there's a lot of different tools there. They also have developed this digital skills glossary, and I will say that at the very even if you're not going to get that digital in the sense of hands-on digital work, being able to talk about everything around your phone or your computer and being able to explain a problem to somebody else becomes very, very important. And so spending some time on vocabulary can be very valuable at the beginning, because people need to be able to explain to you why whatever they're trying to do doesn't work. Or I'm just going through this right now at work where suddenly my computer is full and it turned out there was a second account. Anyway, I've had to write to our IT people a description of the problem, and I had to use their language to help them understand what I am struggling with. And I don't, that's a very important thing. So even when you're working with learners, like if they're going to make a Google slide presentation, excuse me, can they explain to you what the problem is they're having, or how they try to do something, or when you move something from here to there. So you want to get clear on that vocabulary. If you are working on vocabulary, there are a bunch of, again, resources here. They've developed this something called Open Educational Resources, OERs, which are these resources that have been developed that are free for you to use and for you to take and change as you need to. So this is an OER resource. And they have an instructor guide. They have a glossary index. They have, basically, they created a slide for each word in the glossary. We can look at it this way. Each slide has a definition. Let's see. Yeah, so there's a definition, there's use in a sentence. You can actually play the audio version of it by clicking on the little guy up there. So again, this might be overwhelming and too much. But if you're talking about specific things, you could come here and grab something, and then that could be a resource that you use with your learners, or your learners could come here and use this if they want to learn vocabulary. Obviously, there are tools like Quizlet and a bunch of other places where you can really practice vocabulary. But the key is to know the words that you want to include there. So this can be a helpful tool for that. The resources here, so they are still developing, they're actually doing a round of professional development, modeling, using all the materials that they've developed. And so they have this reflection roadmap is a useful tool if you want to go deeper into this, more as a reading full resource. Let's see if it'll open up. Well, didn't want to. There we go. So again, this is an overview for someone who's never even done any of this work, but you'll see in here that there is a lot. Let's go back up to that index. So we have, they even have a section on assessing. They talk about some models, practices, and resources. So a lot of what we've been kind of working on. One of the things that so this draw has been a project of a number of different organizations funded through Octave. And one of those is the World Education EdTech Center. And maybe many of you are familiar with them. They develop a lot of really great resources. So they're one of the partners in this process. And they talk a lot about what they call teaching or instructional routines. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about strategies. One of the strategies for teaching digital skills is this idea of teaching routines. And teaching routines, again, comes from math. Instructional routines in math is a very common concept. It's the idea that there are repeated certain activities that we do, say in math. I'm not a math teacher, so I don't know that in math, but I do know when I was teaching ESL that if I was introducing new vocabulary or we had a reading out of this textbook, that I had a set of activities or lesson elements that I would use, and my learners knew that, right? So if I was going to, we would review vocabulary before we did the reading, and then maybe we would have a little, a worksheet, but maybe it was a word search or a crossword puzzle or something to practice that vocabulary later on. So there were certain activities that connected to certain kinds of content that I repeated. So the lesson on any given day would be quite different and mixed, and I would be bringing in a variety of things, but there were certain parts of it that were the same. And that actually in studies has shown that learners actually, that's kind of a comfortable thing. Like we know we're going to be doing this thing. Oh, it's time for a Kahoot on our vocabulary, which we do every Friday, or we are going to do a reading. So I know that means we're going to end up doing a partner conversation where we're going to talk a little bit about what we read, or we're going to pull out all the words that begin with the letter A, or whatever it is, right? So we have these routines, and you're probably doing that already. What the folks with the Draw project have thought about is, can some of those have technology in them? So we begin this idea, for example, if you're teaching vocabulary, that maybe you would have a Quizlet set for that. So Quizlet lets you create a set of vocabulary words with a definition, and then they're basically like, you have it on your phone on an app, and you can just quiz yourself over them. But then there's some games even in Quizlet that help you make it even a little bit more fun than just having your having cards there. So the strategy of having teaching routines is that we are kind of conscious of the fact that we have certain ways that we do things, and our learners are aware of that as well. That we can bring in technology as part of those routines, and then as the learners become more confident, we can add more skills. So, and I didn't really get into this here, but there's a concept of scope and sequence, maybe I talked about last time, where, the first time you introduce how to make slides, you teach these 3 skills. But then the second time we do slides, we practice those 3 skills, but now maybe we add one more, right? So there's a scaffolding that occurs with these digital tools. So you don't use everything all at one time, but you sort of, what, how do we ratchet up, and what is the order of how we do that, which is the scope, right? So the sequence is the order of how we do it, and the scope is what is the beginning level, what is the next level, what is the third level. So, I think some of you mentioned Padlet. I know, Rachel, when you were talking about the CapCut, the first time people use something, there's often a lot of struggle. And as a teacher, it can make you feel like, oh, was that worth it? Like it took a lot of time out of my lesson to get everybody comfortable with, to get everybody a Gmail account, right? Is it worth it? It feels like it wasn't worth it. It feels like it took a lot of time and people are irritated and frustrated, and I don't think I want to ever do it again. Sometimes you need to do it a second or third time, right? Like people need to know how to log into their Google account. Gary, were you going to ask a question?
Yeah, well, what was the name of that platform? It was
The
CapCut?
CapCut, right, Rachel?
How do
You
you
can put it,
spell it?
you can put it in the chat. This was a video making tool, right?
Okay,
Yeah, it's CapCut, CAPCUT. I'll put it in the chat.
okay.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yes. But it's true with other things. Like last week we used Mentimeter, and I think for some people that was a struggle, right? You're looking at one screen, it's hard to get to another thing. Is it worth doing it? And that is a question as a teacher, right? We don't want to spend a lot of time, you know, trying to push something just because it's fun. It should have some meaning, and we're going to use it again and again. QR codes is another one, right? Where the first time people have to scan a QR code. Nowadays it's a little simpler because it's in most people's phones, it's on in their camera. But when I used to use QR codes before, you had to download an app. I was like, is it worth it? It's like, yes, it is worth it, because it is something they're going to use in their real lives, and it is something I'm going to use more than one time. So have that in your mind a little bit when you're thinking about what it is that you choose to spend time on, and just know that sometimes these things just need more than one iteration. Just because the first time people do things is always some people are going to struggle, and it's hard for those folks. But when they do it the second time, third time, it begins to feel more comfortable, and people build a sense of their ability to overcome the obstacles, which is a great thing to recognize in ourselves. Okay, so this idea of teaching routines, so we have a couple here that they gave as examples in the Draw course reflection roadmap. So for example, they have a workforce preparation topic area. They are developing it for mixed level English learners, and they created a routine where they're sharing personal information in online forms. If we think about how many times we've had to fill out online forms, right? If you're ordering something, if you're signing up for something, maybe you're registering for a workshop, right? There are these boxes, and you have to know you have to get inside the box, and then are you going to do capitalize your letters? Like all of these pieces are skills, and the more we do it, the more it's just easy. But the first few times we do it, it's really, really hard. So developing over and over again in your class that we're going to fill out a form. This is a medical form, a fake medical form. This is a job application. This is a housing lottery. This is a grocery order. There are a lot of the same skills, but you're doing them in these different formats, but you're seeing the similarities, and that becomes part of the routine as well as scaffolding to different levels. So if you click on these links, you'll get out to the actual lesson. And these are all living in something called LINCS, which if you're not familiar with, you should know about LINCS. So LINCS is spelled LINCS. I'll add it to the resources at the end. These are the partners I mentioned earlier who've been developing all the draw things. So I mentioned the EdTech Center, JFF, and SAFL are the other 2 partners. And everything that they're creating, because it's been paid for by Octave, is sitting in LINCS. So LINCS is the federal government Department of Education's platform for professional development for adult education teachers. And so if you think in the city, maybe you've had professional development through DYCD, which is today, or maybe you've gone to professional development that's put out by the RAIN, if you have funding, if your program has funding from the state. On the federal level, LINCS is that. So LINCS is the way that the federal Department of Education pushes out its priorities. And so this is one of their priorities, and everything they do ends up on LINCS because that's the free space for us as teachers to go, or people working in this field. Anyway, so they have here a tech instructional routine, sharing personal information in online form. They talk about who the learners are. They even get into the social emotional learning, cognition, adult literacies. The routine is filling out personal information in online forms, and then they kind of break out the lesson. And it's not a very long, deep lesson plan, but it gives you some ideas of how you could go about doing it. And it's connected again back to the SDEI. The like financial literacy, notice and wonder might be a phrase you've heard before that's often, again, Cynthia Bell, who's my colleague, actually wrote these for this product. And notice and wonder is used a lot in math, but we can use it in any content instruction that we're doing. So you have people looking at something and you ask them, what do they notice? And then you ask them, what do they wonder? And the first time you do that, it might be really hard to get people to respond. But as you use that more and more, the minute you say notice and wonder, your learners will know, okay, what do I notice? Okay, and that makes me wonder this, like, what are my questions? And what that does is develop that space in our brain for new information to come in, right? Especially when I'm doing workshops around technology, and even today I'm speaking way too much and you guys should have more opportunities to talk. But one of the things that I find is I'm often a tour guide, right? I'm like showing you this is here and that is there. And it might feel kind of comfortable to you, like you're absorbing the information, but it's not going to sit in your brain the same way it would if you go in and find it. Or you notice, there's I don't know what this tool is, but I noticed that there's a place over here that I can make a copy. And, then you've done all that thinking. So we're going to do a little exercise in a moment, which is a scavenger hunt. And I know someone else mentioned they use scavenger hunts, but scavenger hunts are really great ways for people to, it helps draw people's attention to things because the scavenger hunt will have questions in it, but you go out and find those answers. And in doing that, you're going to click around, and all of that is helping you feel a little bit more not safe exactly, but you'll familiar and able to be in this space and to find the things that you need. So I'm going to skip us down here to North Star. Let's skip ahead to Google Applied Digital Skills. So we're going to do a scavenger hunt for Google Applied Digital Skills. Have any of you used Google Applied Digital Skills? I'm going to look at the chat in case you want to respond there. So we mentioned it last time. Google basically developed a list or a series of lessons where they're using their tools in an applied way. So you can see examples here. Introduce yourselves in Google Slides. Create a presentation all about a topic. So they're going to teach you how to give a presentation, but at the same time, they're going to teach you the kind of the digital skills to develop that slideshow. So if we go out to Apply Digital Skills without even having an account, so you do need to sign in to, you can create classes in Apply Digital Skills. You can connect the lessons in Apply Digital Skills to Google Classroom, but they are separate to start with. But without even doing that, just to decide if it's something that you might find useful, when you get to the website, up at the top, you'll see we have Start Teaching, Start Learning, Browse Curriculum, and Teaching Resources. If we go to Browse Curriculum, you'll see these collections at the top change, so that when you come back here, it might not look exactly like this. And down here you have all, it looks like there's 216 lessons. You'll see that number changes because they're adding new ones or taking some out. So there are a total of 216 lessons. That's kind of chaotic and hard for us to navigate. So it's important to use their filters. Their filters are actually very valuable. The audience filter I don't find so useful because I find that some of the lessons they've created for even late elementary could still be useful in adult learning. It's just you change what the content is. So they have identified some for adult learners, but I don't use that search filter very often. What I find helpful is maybe there's a certain tool that I want to work on. So like we've talked today about using email maybe. So finding all the lessons that have Gmail in them, we get us down to 20. So there are 20 lessons that have Gmail in them. And then as I scroll over, I can see very quickly this one is only Gmail. So if that's the one I want, that might be, that only we're going to practice our emailing skills. Some of these other ones require me, this is going to have calendar in it. This is schedule emails for goal setting, right? That's just Gmail. Communicate using email, just Gmail. So I can decide which one I'm interested in. I can also see a little bit more information here. This is one lesson, and it's going to take 45 minutes to 90 minutes. The way these lessons are set up is a series of like 2-minute videos that take you step by step. And there's often a 2-minute video, and then you go do something. And then you come back and watch the next 2-minute video and you go do something. When you sign in, you can then save this lesson to your favorites, or you can put it into a class and assign it to everybody in your class. So you can come back and use it that way. But again, even without signing in, you can just come and do it. And some of these, what I've heard from teachers is often that they take the lesson here and then they translate what they learned in the lesson to teach their learners. So you might not actually use the whole lesson content here. You might take a piece of it and use that with your learners, but you have learned from taking this. And I've learned, there's a really great slides activity where you make a if-then adventure story. I did not know that you could link to other slides in your Google Slides presentation. So you don't have to go through it in order, right? You can click on a link and it'll take you to slide number 10. And then from slide number 10, you can go to slide number 18. And the if-then story is that, right? It's like a bifurcated story where, Nell is going to work today and she forgot her lunch. Does she go home and get her lunch, or does she go to a restaurant for lunch? And then the story goes on from there. And the storytelling is the content, but using the slides as for the digital piece of it, and because it kind of makes it exciting, it becomes a kind of a game afterwards. So this is a very rich space. If we scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see here in the footer where it says English. If I change that, so with Google, you notice that little arrow, that's always a sign that there's more information there. So if I click on that little arrow, can I get down there? My Zoom things are down there. Okay. I can click on Spanish. And what that does is it lets me see all the sessions they have in Spanish. And it's going to want to automatically translate it, but there are 26 basically, and they are in Spanish. If you go in, the videos are in Spanish. And so that's another strategy, is that we can also find tutorials and lessons that are actually in folks' native language as a way to help them with their digital skills. And then when we're using those skills, we get back to the actual content of learning English or whatever subject matter you're dealing with. So it's a limited number. It's 26 out of the 216, but they do have a number of lessons in Spanish. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you the exercise we're going to do. You're going to go to, I'm going to put this link in the chat, but you're going to go to this link and you're going to make a copy, because you want, each person should have their own one of these. It's a 9-question scavenger hunt. You're going to go to Apply Digital Skills with google.com, and you're going to answer the questions, and then we're going to come back. And you're also going to take a break. So it's 2:11. We're going to come back at 2:30. So I'm going to give you quite a while because it's a little bit tricky to move around, and I also want you to take a little break. So the first step is, let me put this in the chat. Yeah, Cindy, it's only in Spanish. And the other resource I have also is only in Spanish, but I will talk a little bit in a moment about other languages or ways to get materials in other languages. So we'll make sure to include that. Okay, so there's a link in the chat. You're going to open that up, and when you open it, you're going to see this document, and you have view-only access. So to make a copy for yourself, I didn't force you to make a copy because I want you to do it yourself. So to make a copy, we're going to go up to File, and we're going to click on Make a Copy. And it's going to ask you, it's going to add the copy of at the beginning of the file name, and it's going to ask you where you want to put it. So you get to decide that. You can also come in here and say Nell's copy, for example, right? I can change the name of my file, and I can decide where it should go. So example, if you were already putting all of the slides from last time, the slides from this time into a folder, maybe you want to add this to that folder. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I can click Select and click Make a Copy. And now I have my copy, and I know that it's the copy because I've changed the name a little bit, right? So I can see up here that this is my copy. Also because I can edit it. So in the other one, you couldn't edit, but once you make a copy, you should be able to edit. So I'm going to stop sharing, and anyone who's struggling with making a copy, we can work that out. Everybody else, oops, sorry. Everybody else can go ahead and start the scavenger hunt. And I said you could work with partners. I feel like this is actually a really good activity to do it on your own. So you're just going to have to go in there and play around. Again, you can do everything that it's asking you to do without logging in, but you are going to have to be creative sometimes to think through how you might get to certain elements. Does anybody need help making a copy? To make a copy, you are going to need to be logged in to your Google. Gary, are you logged into your Google? Because I can make a copy and give you your own if that's easier. And you're muted. There you go. And I'm going to pause the recording. All righty. So who can tell us how many total lessons are currently available in Google Applied Digital Skills? And you can either just shout it out or you can put it in the chat. Yay, Christine says 216. Fantastic. So it does, I kind of demonstrated that to you. It does tell you that at the top. Once you're in here and you go to Browse Curriculum, it tells you the number of lessons right here. How many lessons are labeled for adult learners, even though I told you that it's not such a great search term? 66, fantastic. And to do that, the quickest way I know is to go to Audience and click on Adult Learners, and the number magically shows up over here. Fantastic. How many lessons are labeled as Gmail? Oh, we got some different numbers here. So one thing to note, if you clicked on this one and you didn't unclick it, it's applying both of those filters. So I'm going to unclick that one. And then we're going to go over to Tool. And under Tool, and my computer just is slow. Let's see here. Now under Tool, I can go down to Gmail. And indeed 20 is the answer. So depending, as I mentioned, if you have any of these other ones clicked, it's going to add multiple filters to your search. So there are 20 total for Gmail. Name a lesson that utilizes only search and slides. This was a bit of a trick question because if you click on search and slides, you get more than the ones that are just search and slides. I see a few people, this maybe is what you meant, 9 or 4. Let's go ahead and look at it. So I'm going to undo my Gmail. And then in here, I'm going to do, I'm actually going to click out for a second because there's goofiness on my end. So in the same one, I'm going to click 2 different things, right? We said search, and what was the other item? Search and slides. And now I need to go to slides as well. And I'm going to apply. And it says there are 90, but now I have to go through and just find the ones that only have search. So search is the G and slides is the yellow. So this is 1 and 2. I believe there are 4. Maybe this is where folks can speak up, but basically you just have to go down. So the trick here is there are lots of activities that include those 2, but they also include other things. And we only wanted to do search and slides. And again, this is all to help you think of ways to search through this giant list and get to what lessons you're interested in. What are the objectives of the create a presentation all about a topic lesson? So this one was a little trickier. I didn't demonstrate this actually, I realized after the fact. So if we go into, I'm going to get rid of these. And you can actually just start typing in up here, right? All about a topic. So this is the name of the lesson that I know exists. Let's see. There we go. So create a presentation all about a topic. This was the lesson I wanted you to look at. I'm going to open that lesson up. So when you're looking at a lesson, it tells you here, each of these little symbols tells you this little video. What I didn't show you was that there's also under details, a lesson plan. And the lesson plan includes the objectives. The objectives in this case are also up here, I think. So these are the learning objectives for this particular lesson. But you do have a lesson plan, you have a certificate of completion, you have a rubric, and you can download the videos in case you're going to show them to people in a place where you don't have internet. So the details is very helpful, but activities is where you start off with. Okay. And how does Google define digital footprint? Did anyone find that one? Yeah, so someone asked, would that be in search? So I think what I did, let me just get back to the main screen. You can try searching for digital footprint here, and it might bring it up. Otherwise, you have to go find, oh, it really wants to do. My computer is like 5 steps behind me. It's not what you expect from your digital tools. I'm just gonna let it think for a moment, behave itself. Okay, so we said digital footprint. Let's see if it is that good of a search. Aha, so there's a lesson called Understand Your Digital Footprint. And again, here it doesn't really tell you, but if you go to the details and you go to the lesson plan, it will define digital footprint for you. So there's a few steps in there. So if we go down here, here's the definition. So your digital footprint is the online information about you that exists as a result of your activity on the internet. Okay, and what apps or tools are used in the plan and event lesson? So again, oh, I see people saying it. Great. Calendars, docs, drawings, email, sheets, and sites, right? So they have a lot. And the way, again, we find that is we go back to that search. And you can say planning an event. And they even have a promote one, but this is good enough. And you can see these are all the tools. So if you know your icons, you know it just by looking here. Otherwise, you might have to go in and look at it and get the list. Well done. And the last question, where did I go? Here we are. No. How many parts? Oh, I didn't add number 9. How many parts are there to Google Workspace slides? So there are the basic lessons. If you just wanted to do basic slides lessons, I'm going to do Workspace slides. So for all the main tools, we can see here very quickly, there are 3 parts. 3 parts to their lesson on slides for Google Workspace, which are just your basic skills. And then the last question, I think, was how many lessons are in Spanish? And that was to have you all go down. So you need to scroll down to the bottom. And if you're looking at the big screen, the big page, that's a lot of scrolling. Here, it's not so bad. And again, I go here, I click on Latin America, and I want to make sure that it stays in Spanish this time. And now I know that I go to begin learning. Oops, sorry, it's the other way. Plan de Estudios, our study plans, study guides, and we have 26. And for some reason, it translated to English again. But when you go in, you'll see the videos are in Spanish. And if the translate, I don't know how to change my Google Translate there. So anyway, you'll see that. You have that option. You can certainly translate the other ones, but the video pieces will be in English. So that's a concern. Excellent. Any questions about a Google Applied Digital Skills? It really is a rich resource. It's hard to know where to begin sometimes, which is why you might want to start off with these Google Workspace lessons for yourself. But I do think sometimes looking, if there's a tool that you've been using already, so maybe some of you, it sounded like we're using PowerPoint or Google Slides, you could look at some of the lessons that they have developed for those tools, and that might give you some new ideas of what you want to do with those tools. That activity I mentioned, that was the if-then adventure story, what was powerful about that was that you really just repeat the same actions a number of times, right? So this idea of linking to a slide in the presentation, that was a particular skill. Making a slide with an image and a bit of writing, and then the writing had to have like a question, do you do this or this? That was a repetitive skill. So by the time you made, a 10-slide presentation that was an if-then story, you had practiced those same skills like 10 times each, which really makes it something that people feel more secure in their abilities. So the repetitive nature of some activities actually is a benefit, even if at the time it feels boring. Breck says, I've used Google Docs and Google Sheets lessons, and they're really good. We did the plan event. It was a really mixed level English class. Excellent. What I like about Applied Digital Skills is the application side to it, right? And these were developed. Google kind of wants the whole world to be a little bit addicted to them, and they're developing these resources for free because they really want everybody in society to use their tools. They have a really big push. It's called Grow with Google, where they actually are really trying to get, small business owners to think about, making their websites using Google Sites, promoting their events using Google Drawing, maybe using Calendar, like all their tools. So they have a lot of trainings they provide for free with the idea to get everybody to use their stuff. And luckily, they know about adult ed, and they've designed at least some of these activities specifically for us. But again, a lot of the activities, even that are designed for the lower levels, it's the content that changes the level. The digital skill level is the same, but the content that you're going to be using to practice those skills will be different for your learners than for a kindergarten class or for a high school class or for my class versus your class. So that's the freedom you have. So again, we mentioned that there are resources out there where the content is baked in, and these are more resources where the content is your piece that you bring, but the digital tool, the digital skills are what are baked into the platform or the tool. So I wanted to go back a second because we didn't go into the North Star one. So last time we talked about North Star as an assessment, and I know someone asked me then if there was access to their online learning resources, and they have actually made these 4 lessons available for free. So again, email is one of them. And so if you use their assessment, or even if you don't, these could be great resources for people to learn these things. And it is a very step-by-step, very much like their assessment. It is not very mobile friendly. I did try doing it on my phone, and it is it's a little difficult. So you're adding some impediments there that you wouldn't have if you're looking at it on the screen. But it does a nice job. This first activity
is a tool. Now you try it.
is just
Look
a
at the
drag
addresses.
and drop.
Decide if they are a web address or an email address.
And
Drag
this is
each
one where
one
you can
into the
change it to
correct box.
Spanish. So this one is available in Spanish.
Observa las direcciones.
I'll stop.
Decide si son direcciones web o un correo electrónico.
So North Star Online Learning, available in English and Spanish, not very mobile friendly. I would say Google Applied Digital Skills, again, available in English and Spanish, not very mobile friendly because you're creating content. Most of the Google tools are very something you can do on your phone, but the level of intricacy here often makes them something that would be very annoying to do on the phone. So some of them, I mean, I think if you're doing a Word document, that would be fine. Or looking at your drive on your phone, or doing a Google search document. But like I said, I just wouldn't do slides on my phone because the frustrations would make me never want to do slides again. So just be aware of that there are some things here that maybe you could do, but generally it's not designed for mobile. Watching the videos works, but actually doing the work is tricky. All right. So we did this piece. So there were 2 other online curriculum that if you're teaching low-level ESL students, or even if they're not so level, but you want to really get into some detail, there is a curriculum designed by from Texas that's used in their adult program for ESL. And it has all of these lessons. So several of you were mentioning keyboarding. This is at the very base level of keyboarding, where you're talking about, maybe even the English alphabet, combining that with a keyboard, talking about uppercase letters, lowercase letters, looking at numbers, symbols. But you don't have to do those if you don't need those. But that could be the one section you use. They have a section on security, right? Talking about strong and weak passwords. Parts of the computer, using the computer, going online. They have a safety section, searching, troubleshooting, and a review at the end. And this is a full built-out lesson. Each of these lessons are built out. There's another one I mentioned, OERs. These are the open educational resources. This is another for low-level ESL students. It only has 10 sections. But it's very explicit. So the lessons are really built out. It's designed actually to do on paper. So you don't, it's more phone oriented, and it includes a lot of resources that are printables that you can use where people actually write rather than necessarily having to have a computer in front of them. And again, depending on your students, you don't need all of these things, but maybe one lesson is really useful or not. And I've given you links to each of these. So we have the DART Educational Foundational English here. We have Digital ESL OERs. The skills library I mentioned earlier that we looked at, where you see the resources, the routines. North Star email in this example, because I'm giving a suggestion of comparing lessons across these different tools on the same topic. So this was an example with email. If we look at DART, maybe. And I feel like this is very nicely laid out. You can get to the lessons here along the side. You can also go to them in order here. You download the lesson. I won't be able to show it to you just now, but yes, I will. Maybe I can share my screen later. I'll put it into our folder. But so you see that each of those lessons is something that's downloadable, and some of them are editable. The OER one is actually, so it's on the OER website, but once you get past that, notice this is the tab. It's actually made in Google Slides. She just changed the orientation. So this is a book, but it's made in Google Slides. It has a lot of support at the beginning. And then, as I mentioned, it has a lot of these printables. So it's set up to print on 8.5 by 11 paper. So again, you can do a lot of activities. Learners could technically have this at home, even if you're teaching them remotely, and they could still either, if they have the wherewithal to print things, they could print these out and still do the hand work in their homes. But it's got a lot. It's very a lot of resources that I think are kind of a fun. Not always what you see when people have developed these lessons. So they did a great job. We're going to run out of time, so I'm not going to do this now, but what I would suggest for you, if this is something you're interested in, would be worth reviewing the lessons that are available here and checking them out and getting a feel for, because they're set up differently. And I feel like that's going to be something that you as an individual teacher, you're going to feel more in sync with the different ways that they've set things up. So it's worth trying it out, like looking for something that you've already done with your learners or something that you've been challenged and want to do with your learners, and go find that lesson and just see what it would take to do it. Does it fit your, how would you have to change it? How is it great the way it is, and how would you have to change it? The very last pieces here are about using the EdTech tools, which are, in this case, mostly the tools. Well, like I said, we have two different kinds of tools. We have tools that come with the content baked in, and we have tools that are the bucket, and you're going to put the content in, but you're going to be practicing certain digital skills. When we talk about integrating technology, as I mentioned before COVID, this was kind of the focus. One of the things that is a little challenging about how we bring technology in is that sometimes we use technology because it feels very shiny and new. And the woman who created Triple E Framework describes this in that she had to go to a conference for her work. And it was the first time she ever saw PowerPoint in action. And she was teaching history, I think. And she saw PowerPoint in action. She's like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing. She came back to teach her students, and she moved all of her lectures. She was doing a lecture on the French Revolution or something, and she moved them all into PowerPoint. And sure enough, for the first week or so, her learners all like sat up and were super engaged. But by the second week, they kind of went back to the behaviors they'd had when she was just giving a lecture. And so PowerPoint in this case did not really do anything to enhance, extend, or engage beyond what good teaching would do. So what she wants us to think a little bit about is that when we're bringing technology in, let's make sure we're using it so that it does this, that it enhances the lesson in some way, that it extends what we're able to do with the lesson, and that it's engaging. It makes students want to participate and do activities. So this, have that in the back of your mind. When you first start using a tool, sometimes you just want to try it out, right? But like Kahoot's a great example. If you've not all used Kahoot, but Kahoot, when I first saw Kahoot, it's not my style as a teacher. I wasn't that into it. And then I went to a conference and they did Kahoot, and it was amazing. Not only was it amazing in that I really got competitive, but I worked with a partner in this room of people that I didn't know. So it was a great way to get to know somebody else. And I learned the things that were, that I got wrong in the Kahoot. So it was actually a very powerful tool. So just have that in your mind. If you want to learn more about the Triple E framework, this is their website. She's written some books. She is K-12, but I think this is one of the simplest ways I've seen talked about when you are thinking. You might have heard of SAMR. SAMR is another way of thinking about this, and SAMR is just strangely too different. It's very complex in its how will you apply it. This is actually quite useful, I think. And she gets at the idea that there are research-based teaching routines, basically, that we know work. And so bringing in technology should continue that. That it shouldn't be like, well, we're just going to use QR codes because they're cool. It's because the QR code helps us get learners to the slideshow so they can learn the new thing and then, you know, extend it outside of the classroom somehow or whatever. So have that in mind. What I did for our resources now, and I'm going to come in here and add all the ones you guys mentioned today, but these are more kind of compendium of resources. And one of the issues is you could, I don't think any of these do that. You could say that here are 5 tools that everyone should use. I don't find that so useful. I heard several of you mention that you use Google Classroom, for example, which if it works for you and your learners, that's fantastic. But if it doesn't, it can be an impediment to your teaching. Quizlet is what I mentioned earlier today, and some people love Quizlet and use it every time there's vocabulary. And other people, that's just not, they find it more useful if learners make their own vocabulary lists or their own paper lists. So if you go, this first one is onto our website, the LEC's website. We have a, sorry, I am going to give you the evaluation. Oh my goodness. You're noticing my digital resilience overcoming my computer slowness today. This is very frustrating. So if you come in here, you'll see a variety of tools. And my thought is you come in here when you're looking for something specific, you want to know how to do something. I really want learners to be able to give me their responses in this way, or I want to try out this, I don't know how, so like, for example, here's Quizlet, right? Paperly's gone, actually, I need to edit this list. So anyway, you have a number of lists here. If you're looking for a tool, the first thing is, what do you want to have happen? Is there something you're doing where the way you do it right now without technology or with the technology that you have, just it's missing something. It could be better. And then you want to think about what is it that would make it better, and then it's finding a tool that does that thing. And that is a challenge. I think that having a giant compendium of tools, unless it really explains what they do, like our list doesn't really do that. So if you need resources like that, always feel free to reach out to me. I'm very happy to try to help. I feel like this is one area that because I've had the luck in my job to play around with a lot of tools, I might have some suggestions for you, but it really depends on the explicit purpose of what you want to do, because this tool and this tool are very similar, but this is a little bit different. Like I'm very excited to try out the, I keep having to look back at it, the CapCut, because I've never heard of it before, but I use something called Loom, which makes little videos. So it's going to be interesting to see how are they different? Why would I use one for, when would I use which one? So I'm very excited about that. Let me give you the survey link for the evaluation. And are there any questions or comments? I'm looking in the chat, but you're very welcome to unmute and say if you have any thoughts or places where you're left wanting more. I'm going to stop sharing.
I'm really happy. I got to learn about a lot of tools I didn't know existed. So thank you.
You're very welcome. So, and it can be overwhelming. So again, I recommend, like, if you can now set an intention for yourself where you're going to try one tool in the next 3 weeks or in the next week, just
Yeah, this is
right, because otherwise it can be, I So what I've seen in myself when I'm trying a new tool is that I have to get comfortable with it first. And when I'm first using it, I'm not going to know all the kind of creative, crazy ways that it might really fit some bigger picture. So I might use it in the most basic way. And then as I get better at it, just as we were sort of saying with learners, we build on that, right? We scaffold
yeah.
on that. We push it a little further along.
CT
Excellent. So
scan.
yeah, anybody else? So I'm going to share, I'm going to send you all the slides link again. I'm going to put the recording up on YouTube and I'll send you that link as well. If you have questions in the future where you're trying to figure out a good app to use, or you're looking for an assessment, or you come up with something amazing, do always feel free to share that. And we are going to be doing another series, I think in February, on mobile, specifically mobile lessons, or lessons that are useful on a mobile phone, because it is such a specific and such a common need. Where today, a lot of these resources are not necessarily mobile friendly. That's the one downside. But I think especially the OER one, where you can print out those documents as paper, that might be something useful for folks even when they don't have computers. All right. Well, if there are no further questions, do fill out the evaluation, and I look forward to seeing you at some future workshops.
Is
And
there
then,
a short name for this workshop that we should use?
Say that again, May.
You know, for the Survey Monkey, is there a short name for the workshop, or should we just cut and paste
Good
the whole
question. So let me
whole
grab.
title? I mean, because I know you need it. Like, I mean, you want a
Yeah,
certain
no.
name to put in there, right?
The joke is that we created the calendar when here, I'm going to put it in the chat. When we were sort of newly using ChatGPT. And I use ChatGPT to help me come up with my titles, and the titles are so long and stupid, so we won't do that again. So this is a shortened version.
Okay.
Yeah, it wanted to add like, you know, another, I don't even know what it was thinking. And I was like, oh, that sounds good. And then I started making my materials. I'm like, that's not that helpful.
Mhm.
So we've learned our lesson. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.